Gentlemen, what you do, what you become is not my concern. The world is full of so-called men like you, and in a perfect world, everything we do comes with a price, but this ain't a perfect world. The mistake you made was you killed my friend. So, I'm gonna kill each and every one of you, and the only disappointment in it for me is that I only get to do it once.
Late at night, as Robert McCall heads home, he notices the light on inside his apartment and pulls out his gun, prepared to deal with whoever is waiting for him. But the moment he steps inside, his guard drops as he catches a familiar scent. It's Susan, his closest friend and former colleague. Over a bowl of soup, the two catch up until Susan admits the real reason she came. It's the anniversary of Vivian's death. Robert recalls how his late wife used to hate his taste in clothes, and the memory briefly draws out a laugh before it gives way to the quiet weight of realizing she is no longer here.
What?
I didn't say anything.
As Susan leaves, she apologizes for coming on a day like this, then gently suggests that maybe it's time he went back home. For all the time he spends helping strangers, she tells him it may finally be time to make peace with his wife's death, because it's what Vivian would have wanted. The next morning, Robert steps out of his apartment to find his neighbor Fatima's garden destroyed. She tells him it was kids, and that they also sprayed graffiti across the walls. As Robert gets ready to paint over it, another neighbor, Miles, passes by and tells him to leave it alone for somebody else.
You're right. I guess anybody could do it, but nobody does, Miles. Ends up everybody complaining because nobody did what anybody could have done or should have done to begin with.
Miles then offers to do the job himself for $350, far less than any painting company would charge. When Robert laughs, Miles insists it's nothing complicated, just a quick dip and roll, and insists he's an artist studying at Bridgeview Arts. When Robert asks why he is not in school, Miles admits he does not attend regular classes. Robert already knows what he does, selling drugs, and tells him that it is short money and that it takes brains to keep it. Later, when Miles comes back out and sees Robert still working on the wall, he lowers the price to $250, which finally gets Robert's attention. Robert tells him he can only work after school, and Miles agrees. For Robert, this was never really about the paint job, but about giving Miles an alternative to the short money of the streets. Elsewhere in Brussels, a man comes home to find his wife sitting at the table, bruised and distressed. As she sobs, a group of mercenaries emerges and moves toward them. Without a word, they shoot his wife, then force the man into a dining chair. When he asks why they are doing this, one of the thugs tells him only that he has his name on a piece of paper, and that is all that matters. Then he puts his meat in the man's mouth and pulls the trigger. Local authorities quickly label it a double murder-suicide, but because the dead man was a DIA asset, Susan is assigned to investigate. She asks her colleague Dave York to accompany her to Brussels, and once they arrive, she immediately notices a strange powder on the table. Along with other inconsistencies, it gives her the impression that this was a professional hit. As the investigation continues, Dave tells her that the data recovered from the dead asset's hard drive has just come back. But Susan says they can discuss it on the plane the next day and heads for the lift to go up to their rooms. However, as she opens the door to her room, two men ambush her and begin brutally throwing her around while demanding to know where their money is. Despite her age and MILF status, Susan fights back hard and even manages to stab one of them in the leg. But she is outnumbered, and once the men lock the room door, whatever follows is left unseen. Meanwhile, back in Boston, Robert watches as Miles paints the wall. Miles decides to design the entire building at no extra charge, much to Robert's delight. Looking through Miles' sketchpad, Robert learns that he has been painting since the 3rd grade. When he asks about the figure that appears throughout the sketches, Miles says it's the hand of God, a tribute to his late brother, a boxer who was shot on his way home from the gym. Before the moment can settle any further, Robert gets a call from Susan's husband, Brian, with the news that Susan is dead. Robert listens in silence, then rises and returns to his apartment. Not long after, he is in Washington watching the service from a distance because officially, he's dead. Once everyone is gone, he approaches Brian, who tells him the police in Brussels are calling it a robbery gone wrong, even though Susan never wore jewelry, apart from her wedding ring. He adds that the DIA is now working with Interpol and has promised to do everything possible to find the killers, but Brian does not sound convinced. After receiving Susan's final belongings, Robert begins investigating her murder himself. As he pulls data from her encrypted phone, the killers in Brussels are drunk and off guard when they are suddenly blown up by the same men who murdered the DIA asset and his wife. Robert eventually breaks through the phone's encryption and is forced to look through the forensic photographs of Susan's body. When he checks the elevator feed, he notices something that sends him immediately back to Washington. In a park, he waits for Dave York, his former partner from Robert's time with the DIA. Dave recalls the hotel collapse where Robert was presumed dead and admits he grieved for a long time afterward. Robert apologizes for not telling him sooner that he was alive. Dave then says he is sorry about Robert's wife, Vivian, and asks whether he is still staying at the beach house, but Robert says he is not. He then explains what he found in the elevator footage. Susan never pressed the button for her floor because the men had already pressed it. They already knew where she was going. When Robert asks whether the agency has found them, Dave says they only found pieces of them after the explosion in their apartment, likely the work of someone cleaning up loose ends. From there, Robert brings out Susan's autopsy report and points to the stab wound beneath her lower third rib, a highly specific close-quarters killing technique that tells him this was a professional hit, not a robbery.
Something else went on in that room.
Mac, whatever it is, whatever you need, I'm in.
Adam,
Same mud.
same blood.
Later, Robert watches a group of thugs pull up and sees Miles leave with them, abandoning the paint job. At the same time, he continues digging into the double murder-suicide Susan had been investigating. As he studies the forensic photos from the scene, he mentally reconstructs the room and concludes that it was most likely staged as a suicide. He calls Dave and tells him that even though the DIA asset was right-handed, his wife was killed by someone left-handed, which means another person had to be in that room. Dave adds that the powder residue Susan noticed came from a latex glove and that 20,000 euros were found in the robber's flat, suggesting those men were set up. Robert says that if this had been an enemy trying to send a message, there would have been no reason to stage it. Susan, he believes, was close to figuring out who else had been in that room, and that is what connects the two cases. Then he tells Dave he will contact him again when he knows more. As Robert continues investigating, he notices that Miles still has not come back after leaving with the thugs. He picks up his gun and heads to a trap house. Once inside, he quickly takes down the first thug he sees, then rides the elevator up and dispatches two more with surgical precision before moving deeper into the building. In the living room, the thugs are pressuring Miles to kill the people responsible for his brother's death that very night. As they urge him to empty the entire magazine into them, Robert suddenly enters with two sausages trained on the room. Then he orders the thugs to stay seated and instructs Miles to come with him.
Who the f*** is this nigga?
I'm your father. Your mama just didn't tell you. Nice.
After they leave, one of the battered men stumbles in and the others are left in stunned disbelief, asking who that ninja was. Outside, Miles knocks Robert's hands away and demands to know whether he understands where they are. When Robert asks why he does not stick to drawing and painting, Miles says that would not put food on his mother's table or pay the bills. Robert then presses the gun into his hands and tells him to start with him if he wants to catch his first body, saying it only takes 5 pounds of pressure on the trigger. When Miles cannot do it, Robert takes the gun back and tells him this is what happens when you deal with liars.
See what happens when you deal with a liar? Huh? You see what happens when you deal with a liar? I lied to your little punk ass. Now I'm gonna kill you. What do you see when you look at me? Tell me, you better give me a right answer to what you see when you look at me. Killer, what you see, yummy? You don't know.
I don't know.
Man ain't spelled G-U-N, son. You got a chance, and I want to hear about your environment, what your mama didn't give you, and the white man won't give you no shot. You got a chance. You have no idea what death is. Make a decision.
All right. Hey, yo, Mr. McCall. Why me?
Why not you?
But why me?
Let's find out together.
Later, as Robert cooks in his kitchen, Miles comes to the door and tells him he has finished painting the wall before stepping inside for a drink. Looking around at the kitchen walls, Miles says that for a plate of that food, he could paint them too for $115. Robert agrees, but only on the condition that Miles reads a book he gives him. Later, during his day job as a Lyft driver, Robert picks up a passenger who claims he is heading to the airport for his daughter's 5th birthday. But Robert quickly senses that something is wrong and deliberately drives in the opposite direction. When the man fails to notice, Robert points out that they have been heading away from the airport for the past 3 minutes. That is when the passenger pulls a knife. Robert responds by swerving the car hard and accelerating, using the movement of the vehicle to throw the man off balance while fighting him inside the cabin. The man eventually pulls a gun as well, but Robert is still able to overpower and kill him, while the car spins through a series of violent turns. Afterwards, Robert takes the man's phone and burns the car, effectively ending his time as a Lyft driver. Apart from driving for Lyft and before Susan's death, Robert had continued living the quiet life he had built around helping people in need. On a train bound for Istanbul, dressed as a devout Muslim man, he locked eyes with a little girl before following a Turkish man into the bar car. He made small talk first, then revealed who he was really looking for: an abusive man who had kidnapped his own daughter and taken her away from her American mother just to punish her. When the man warned that looking for someone like that would be dangerous, Robert said he would at least give him a chance to stop, reconsider, and imagine the worst thing that could ever happen to him. The man then got up and sent his men to kill him, but Robert stayed calm, started his watch, read the room in an instant, and eliminated all three with the same ruthless precision, using whatever was within reach. Then he approached the man at the back, stopped the watch, and spoke to him about two kinds of pain: pain that hurts and pain that alters. Today, he told him, he got to choose. Back in Boston, the girl's mother rushed into a law firm and brutally hugged her daughter. She was told that even the State Department had no idea how the child got back. All they knew was that 45 minutes earlier, someone had delivered her downstairs. The next day, Robert picked up an elderly Holocaust survivor named Samuel, who told him he was his favorite driver because he always arrived on time, like clockwork. Sometimes, Robert sat with him on a bench and listened as he spoke about his long-lost sister. That day, Samuel showed him a portrait of her, Magda, and told him what had happened. He had turned 9 during the Third Reich, and he and his sister had been sent to different camps. He never saw her again. 60 years later, he saw her portrait being auctioned for $12 million. When he brought the case before a judge and said the painting belonged to his sister, the court demanded proof, and now he believed he finally had it. After Samuel finished telling the story, a man from the residence came to bring him back inside and told Robert he had tried to help him years earlier. Samuel, he said, had been claiming for a long time that he could prove the painting was his sister's, but he had nothing concrete. No records, no bill of sale, only repeated trips back to court to hear the same answer, perhaps because it gave him something to hold on to. Later, after driving Samuel home from court, Robert listened as he complained that the judge had barely looked at the evidence. Robert suggested that perhaps the painting seemed so familiar because it was extremely rare. Samuel then showed him the only surviving photograph of Magda and spoke about her again, returning in the end to the same wound. Losing the painting felt like losing her a second time. After that, Robert spent his days driving all kinds of people through the city. A young man on his way to his first job interview, a girl who had just been accepted into her dream university, and, among them, one passenger whose path echoed Robert's own, a man heading to Iraq for his first tour. Robert told him he would be here when he got back. At home, he finished another book, and the next day he went to the bookstore for a new one. There, he saw the little girl he had rescued from the Turkish man. He quietly signaled for her to stay silent while her mother handed him his next book. Robert said this would be the last title on the list, and she told him she hoped he would start another soon. Before leaving, he asked what had happened to the for sale sign, and with a smile toward her daughter, she told him their plans had changed, which clearly pleased him. Later that night, Robert picked up a crying girl who was visibly in pain and being escorted by another man who handed Robert his card. On the drive, Robert took in her torn blouse and her condition, then turned away from her home and drove straight to the hospital instead. Afterward, he returned to the hotel, where 4 young men were waiting, and told them the card had been declined.
Shithead, let you hang with us because your daddy's a client. You fuck up the first thing.
When they gave him another one, he informed them that he had not taken the girl home at all. He had taken her to the hospital, where they were pumping her stomach that very moment. Once he realized they did not even know her name, Robert said that under normal circumstances, he would have given them a chance to do the right thing, but not tonight. He demanded their cameras, phones, and anything else they had used to record what they had done. One of them moved to lock the door, and as he did, Robert took in the room, started his watch, and responded the moment the first one threw a punch. He dodged, slashed his face with the credit card, and snapped his arm like a biscuit. The second came in next and went down just as fast, left with both a broken arm and a shattered wrist. The third reached him only to have his bones crushed and his neck broken, collapsing to the floor in a heap. Then Robert turned to the next one, told him to come on, and drove heavy blows into his face without pause. It was over in 29 seconds. The last one, already in tears, was asked whether he was right-handed or left-handed. When he said left-handed, Robert ordered him to call 911 and tell them exactly what had happened, adding that his daddy's money would not save him this time. When it became clear that he also did not know the girl's name, Robert told him to give him his left hand. The boy hesitated, and Robert grabbed his head and repeated the order. Once he complied, Robert told the bitch she had better leave a 5-star rating, then broke her fingers and left her sobbing on the couch. After teaching them that lesson, Robert did not have to wait long to receive that 5-star rating from the one he had spared. Soon after, he returned home, where he caught the scent of his now-late friend Susan inside his apartment, unaware that she was about to be killed in a staged robbery. Back in the present, Dave is at home with his family when someone knocks at the door. His wife answers it and finds Robert standing there. Robert makes it clear that he is not just Dave's former colleague, but the man who led him for 7 years. After Dave introduces him to the family, the two men sit down, and Robert tells him about the man who tried to kill him the day before. Then he hands over the man's phone, still protected by military-grade encryption, and says that the people who killed Susan are cleaning up loose ends, which means anyone looking into the Brussels hit is in danger, including Dave and his family. He tells him to send the phone to the office, run the numbers, and check the names against passenger manifests in and out of Brussels around the time of the flight, because whoever they are looking for made calls to that device. Pedro assures him he is on it. Then a brief, loaded silence settles between them, and Robert breaks it by pulling out his own phone and dialing Pedro's number. He has already cracked the encryption and found his contact in the man's phone. When Robert asks what happened, Pedro can only say that Robert died, and that gave him perpetual anxiety.
It's fine. Take me to jail, I could use the break.
Under Robert's cold stare, he finally admits that 3 months after Robert disappeared, the government shut them down, and he went private soon after.
Doing the same things you and I did for God and country, killing names on a piece of paper, only now there's a price next to them.
We killed the enemy.
Who said they were the enemy? Not us, not me. We just followed orders.
As Robert stays silent, Dave keeps on yapping, insisting there are no good men or bad men, only enemies, and people like Susan caught in between. He admits his team did not know the Brussels contract was a deep cover agency asset, and that Susan was close to figuring out who had been in that dining room. She was the only one who could have put it together, until Robert came back from the dead. That is when the truth comes out. Dave is the one who delivered the fatal stab wound to Susan. Not long after, Dave lets it slip that everyone from Robert's old unit is part of it now, including Ari, Resnik, and Kovac, then leads him outside to a parked car where the rest of the team is waiting. After telling Robert that none of it is personal, Dave listens as Robert tells him the world is full of men like them, men who believe everything they do will pass without consequence. In a perfect world, he says, all of it would come with a price, but most of the time, it does not. This time, it will. They made the mistake of killing his friend, and because of that, he is going to kill every last one of them. Soon after, Dave's wife comes out of the house to take the children to school. Robert uses the moment to step out of the standoff, asking her for a lift to the station, and as he leaves, he makes sure to finger bang each of the thugs. Absolutely savage from Denzel, threatening a man, then riding with his family while miming the kill is next-level menace. 2 of the mercs soon pull up at Susan's husband's place, but Robert gets there first and moves him to safety in a motel. There, he tells him that the men coming for him are the same ones who killed Susan. When Brian asks why, Robert gives him the truth without dressing it up because he is a loose end. Later that night, back at Robert's apartment, Miles has started painting the kitchen walls and calls Robert while he is out on the road. As they talk, Miles hears the dogs barking and looks outside, assuming it is only a pizza delivery man. But it is not a delivery driver at all. It is Dave and another merc, Kovac, trying to break into the apartment. Watching from afar, Robert tells Miles to go into the bedroom, open the bookshelf, and pull out a book called Native Son. As Dave's team picks the locks and enters the apartment, Miles presses the hidden button and disappears into the concealed room. Inside, he spots Robert's old Marine uniform and asks what the room is, but Robert only tells him to stay calm and keep quiet. Robert listens as the mercs move carefully through the apartment, searching every part of it. When Dave approaches the bookshelf, Robert tells Miles to go farther inside. There, Miles panics when he sees a glass panel, but Robert steadies him and explains that it is a two-way mirror so they can't see him. However, the suspicious mirror quickly catches Dave's attention, and as Miles starts to panic on the other side, Dave walks up to it and draws a sad face across the glass. Just as he is about to fire through it, Robert calls him and dryly remarks that since he's already inside his house, he may as well water the plant. Dave tells him he is making a mistake by going to war with him, but Robert cuts him off and gives him that main character energy.
You got it backwards, Dave. You're going to war with me.
Afterward, Dave lies back on the bed, looks up, and notices a framed picture of a beach on the ceiling. In that moment, he understands exactly where Robert is heading, back home. Once the men leave, Miles steps out of the hidden room, but the moment he opens the front door, the mercs ambush him. Elsewhere, Robert reaches a bridge and is told that the town ahead is being evacuated because of a severe hurricane. He still gets through by flashing a fake badge. When he arrives in the abandoned town, he takes in the empty streets and parks outside his late wife's bakery. Not long after, Dave and his team pass through the same bridge, kill the officer after he tells them to turn back, and continue into town. Once there, Dave points out his wife's bakery to the others before leading them to Robert's old house. After clearing it, he chooses the coastal watchtower as his high ground and begins scanning for Robert from above. He soon spots him and orders Kovac to move in, with Ari staying outside as backup. As Kovac enters what turns out to be a tailor's room, a sewing machine suddenly starts running on its own. He moves toward it, alert, then catches Robert's reflection in a nearby mirror and fires at the glass. But Robert is already moving. He steps out with a harpoon gun and drives it straight into Kovac's face. Hearing the shot, Ari rushes inside to check on him and finds Kovac completely fucked in the face. Dave orders Ari and Resnik to push toward the ocean. As Ari moves along the shore, he notices photographs of Susan plastered across the wall of one of the buildings. He steps closer to look, and Robert suddenly appears behind him with 2 knives, then cuts him down with brutal surgical precision. Over the radio, Dave demands to know what is happening, and Resnik soon finds Ari's body and reports that he is dead, with pictures of Susan everywhere. At the same time, Robert is already moving across the street toward his wife's bakery. When he spots Dave at the top of the watchtower, he fires at an electrical pole to create cover, then crosses the road. Dave realizes too late that it is Robert and radio's Resnik, who has also picked up Robert's blood trail to confirm his location. As Resnik advances, Robert enters the bakery and uses the flour inside to his advantage, all while keeping an eye on Dave above as Resnik closes in below. Dave orders Resnik to move into the bakery, but as he does, Robert steps back out and fires toward the watchtower. Resnik soon throws a flash grenade into the building, but the suspended flour in the air ignites instantly, and the blast throws him backward. From above, Dave fails to land a shot on Robert and calls out to Resnik, only to realize moments later that he is also fucked on the ground. That is when Robert comes over the radio and tells him that no one is left now but the 2 of them. But Dave does not retreat. Instead, he reveals the contingency plan he came with. Miles is tied up in the trunk of a car, struggling to get free, and Dave fires into it, telling Robert he took a chance that the boy meant something to him.
I'll make it simple. Step out, show yourself, and I won't kill the kid.
Then, with the wind rising around them, he keeps firing into the car, remarking that it makes things interesting as he deliberately sends shots into the side mirror and the taillight. He tells Robert he has 2 more rounds left and that the last one is going straight through the middle of the trunk. Inside, Miles panics as Dave prepares to finish it, but just as he lines up the final shot, Robert fires into the rear tire at exactly the right moment, throwing off Dave's aim and forcing the shot wide. As Robert closes in on the watchtower, Dave starts crashing out. He keeps shouting into the storm until a violent gust of wind knocks him to the floor, drawing a cry of pain from him as he scrambles back up. Then, the washed-up fighter yells that Robert could not save his wife, could not save Susan, and cannot save this boy either. The moment hangs just long enough for Robert to appear behind him and drive a punch across his face. Dave pulls a knife and lunges, but Robert slips every strike and throws him hard to the ground. Dave still manages to stab him, and from there, the fight turns into a full brawl, the 2 of them punching, grappling, and slamming each other into the floor. Dave eventually locks Robert into a chokehold, but Robert reaches back and drives his fingers deep into Dave's eyes. As Captain Anxiety screams out loud, Robert takes the knife and tears into him again and again, before ending it with the exact same close-quarters technique Dave used on Susan. But he does not leave him there. He starts aura farming, then rips open the back of Dave's neck, then kicks the body down onto the rocky shore where the waves pull it away.
I'm a bigger daddy than him. I'm older than him. Although he's a real daddy. He's got kids and I don't. But daddy is a state of mind, you know what I'm saying? I'm your daddy.
After standing in that moment with the revenge he has finally taken for Susan, Robert goes to the car and frees Miles from the trunk. The boy has been hit in the leg, and Robert brings him into the house and sits him down in the kitchen. After checking the wound, he says it is not as bad as it looks because the bullet passed through. Miles, still shaken, says his mother is going to be furious at Robert, but adds that he has his back.
Hey, Mr. McCall.
Yeah.
Who are you, man?
Robert does not answer. Instead, he moves quietly through the house, stopping at the framed picture of himself with his late wife, then going to the window to look out at the shore. A moment later, Miles joins him and says the bleeding has stopped. He asks if this place is Robert's, and Robert says that it is. Then he tells Miles to sit down, and together, they look out at the ocean crashing against the rocks. Sometime later, Miles is on a bus when one of his classmates asks what he is drawing. He says he is working on a superhero character, someone who knows things before you do, has secret rooms, and magic locks. When she asks if he can fly, Miles says he drives a Malibu instead, and that makes her laugh, though she admits it is still cool. Meanwhile, back at home, Fatima arrives to find the wall completely transformed. Miles has painted a vivid mural of people walking through an urban garden. As she takes it in, she notices another painting on the opposite wall with the words, "I leave you the best of myself," signed beneath with his mark, the hand of God. Elsewhere in the senior's residence, the residence manager apologizes to Robert's old pal, Samuel. But instead of simply returning the painting he believed he had lost, they bring a woman into the room, and the two recognize each other at once. It is his sister, Magda, lost to him since the Holocaust, and they embrace like siblings pulled back from another lifetime. Turns out Robert had asked Susan to help verify that Samuel was the rightful heir to the painting, but in the end, they found far more than that. They did not just recover the portrait. They found Magda herself and brought the two of them back together. Back on the beach, Robert stands alone, kissing his wedding ring and looking out at the water. And for the first time in a long while, with the ghosts behind him quieter than they have been in years and the weight of the past no longer pulling at every step, Robert McCall allows himself to stay still, letting the peace he fought for finally meet him where he is.